Hi guys, welcome to the third and final part in my series on the Operation Market Garden commemorations here in the Netherlands. Located on the Ginkelse Heath near Ada, this event happens every single year, but because this is the 70th commemoration, it was extra big and there were extra lot of reenactors here, and the public turned out in record numbers to get a look at the action. As you can see, all sorts of vehicles were parked not only near the drop zone, but also in separate camps further back in the forest. There were even a few German vehicles, as you may have noticed earlier. The tanks especially were a feature, and they were parked right up front, and people could write messages on them in chalk, just like back in the 1940s. Your camp consisted of those people who had been in the convoy traveling through the country all week long. And you can see kind of a sampling of some of the vehicles there, and everyone had set up their tents, and you could come and talk to them. Here you can see we even got to have a chat with Michael and Alan Perry, who were part of the convoy. I kind of mentioned they were participating in my last video. Now, the drops, which were scheduled, didn't get started at the time they were supposed to. They were supposed to start around 11 and then sort of be interspersed with a commemorative ceremony, and then afterwards there were supposed to be even more drops. It was supposed to be a record-sized drop this year. Unfortunately, the weather was not very cooperative. We had a very foggy morning, lots of low cloud cover, which are not ideal conditions for parachute drops. So unfortunately, the event could not start until almost 3 in the afternoon, and because of that, they actually had to cancel at least half of the paratroopers that were going to drop because there just wasn't time. And by then, you can see just how crowded it had gotten at the landing zone. Later reports said that over 60,000 people turned out to see this drop, which is why it could be really hard and challenging to get good photos of the action. You can also see that later in the afternoon, some of the owners of the various historical vehicles started driving around in convoys on the terrain just to keep the public entertained and give everybody something else to look at while we were waiting for the airplanes to arrive. What you see here are mostly just the smaller Jeeps and reconnaissance vehicles and things that were parked out near the heath and could get out and drive around more easily. The larger vehicles like the tanks just stayed put the entire time, and we actually found a place to watch the action right next to the tanks. It was a good spot near the end of the field on one side. The tanks were also planning to do a demonstration towards the end of the day where they would drive around the heath, but we didn't get to stay for that because since everything got postponed so much, they were not actually going to be able to get out and drive around until close to 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. About half an hour, 45 minutes or so, I would say maybe even longer, before the actual drop started, a helicopter appeared in the area and started circling over very low, and I assume they were checking to make sure the conditions were correct to go ahead with the drop. And then a little bit later, the actual action started. And the jump opened with jumps from 2 historical Dakota airplanes who dropped paratroopers who were dressed in period costumes and using historical World War II style parachutes. Now, of course, there are only 2 Dakotas, and they only hold maybe 12 men or so, 16 men. So this was not so much, and they came fairly spaced out. The people doing this were not even necessarily military. Some of them are just people who are parachutists who wanted to reenact this particular event. Sometime after the Dakotas finished their run, the actual military airplanes started arriving. These were a group of Hercules cargo planes, and they were going to be dropping the main body of actual active duty paratroopers. And the first wave was the largest and consisted of about 5 planes, if I remember correctly. And they came in and dropped their loads in succession. And in fact, they had to make 2 to 3 passes of the field to unload all of the paratroopers. So I'm only showing you just one segment here. Originally it was planned, as I understand, to actually drop more guys all at once and fly in tighter formation, but because of the weather conditions, presumably that just wasn't safe, so they just had to kind of come in a sort of a line and drop sort of continuous lines of guys. And there were a couple of waves. There was the main larger wave, and then later on some smaller waves with more Hercules came in and dropped more men. And these guys were all from a variety of armed forces, including the Americans, the Brits, the Poles, and also even Axis armies as well. So the Germans and Italians also participated and contributed some of their paratroopers for this drop. Due to the nature of this event, there's so many people here, and also just what was going on, there were a huge number of both military and civilian paramedics and ambulances on scene. And as I understand, almost not a single year goes by where there isn't some kind of injury. Here you can see an ambulance driving out onto the field to pick up a paratrooper, because someone always breaks something, inevitably, in these drops. The paratroopers coming off the field were greeted, mobbed by a whole bunch of children looking for high fives, and some of the paratroopers had even brought candy to give out to them, which made them particularly popular amongst the kids. The drops continued for some time, sort of over a long period of time, and even though it had taken a long time to get started, most people stuck around just to watch the final payoff, and I think everybody had a really good day, despite some of the hiccups and problems with the weather, which is just what you're going to get with these sorts of things, and unfortunately, everything doesn't always work out you want, even on a big commemoration day. And the festivities were closed finally by Sloan Dornier, an old German plane, flying over the drop zone and releasing flowers as one final tribute. All in all, it was a great event and a perfect way to commemorate the 70-year anniversary of this operation.